Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano-cap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have Claude Zdanow, the CEO of ONAR, stock ticker ONAR. ONAR is a technology-first network of companies built to deliver business performance through disruptive marketing and technology. Claude, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Will.
Claude, I start almost every interview by going through people's LinkedIn page, but you had kind of an interesting life pre-LinkedIn. Tell me a bit more about, first off, have you always loved music? Second off, what was the transition like when you dropped out of school to start music full time? And how much traction did you have at that point that gave you that kind of confidence? So just kind of want you're basically your music background and up to you being 22 years old.
Sounds good. Long time ago at this point. Look, music was always in my blood. I think like many kids, you grow up wanting to be something when you're older. And for me, that was, I wanted to be a rock star. And I was very fortunate that I was, in a band, and that grew up with kind of in a music scene that was really growing at the time on Long Island, which was this kind of pop punk emo rock scene, if you will. And, basically the band I was in growing up didn't really kind of have that successful opportunity. But then another band, this band called Patent Pending, that had gotten signed to, an imprint, on a major label, basically asked me to come on the road with them. And so it's, the ripe age of kind of 17, 18 years old, right around that time, I was on the road touring with bands like Zebrahead and Authority Zero and these bands that I had grown up loving as a kid. I got to play with them, right? And thought that's what I wanted to do for my entire life, and was going to do forever. That's what I dreamed of as a kid. And, reality of life happened. And I decided that wasn't for me. But fortunately went back to New York City, kind of not far from where I grew up, went to college. And while I was in college, kind of going through that, I think, normal process of trying to figuring out what I wanted to do in life, I just came up with the decision to start a business. I had a small business when I was in high school, in bands, with a small recording studio. And I said, what if I could do that again, but on a professional level? And lo and behold, I got the courage to rent a space, in New York City that had been an old broken down, studio owned by Ornette Coleman. And I kind of, got an owner of the building, gave me a shot at a lease. And next thing I knew, I was running my first business, which was a recording studio in New York City. And fortunately, very quickly afterwards, I started making enough money where I didn't have to, where I could pay for my own college. Right. And so once I realized that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and pursue this business thing, and, left college basically, halfway through my second year and kind of never looked back.
Yeah. And, I was looking through some of the people and just records that you guys were a part of. I think you guys mixed Drake's second album, I think it was, or Thank You Later or something.
So the way the recording studio business works is, there's different kind of phases and process of making a record, right? From producing it, recording it, mixing it, mastering it. So we had all those different capabilities in the facility that I built. And over the years that I did that, we worked on 22 Grammy Award-winning projects, everything from Drake and Eminem through Yo-Yo Ma and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So really a wide range. And in some of those albums we may have mastered, we may have recorded, we may have mixed part of it. So it varies from project to project. But yeah, we really had an awesome time working with some incredible, talented people across a range of genres when I was running that business.
So one of the problems with artists, with musicians, with people with artistic traits is that they tend to lack any sort of business or marketing gene a lot of time. And that there's a lot of great artists out there, but it's obviously the artists that can actually market themselves that are the household names that we all know. And so when did you kind of notice that you had that too? That you weren't just oh, I want to write some music, but I want to build a business. I want to get my name out there. When did you realize that you're just as much promoter as you are musician?
Look, I think A friend of mine once said that being in a band is like running a business, right? And you have different people who have different functions. And I actually think there's a lot of parallels, right? If you look at, you know, without fast forwarding even what we do today, right? To be in a band, you have in a successful band, it's not just about how good you are musically, right? It's what is the image? Well, how are you positioning yourself? Who is your audience? How are you speaking to them? How are you, making merch, selling your CDs, getting yourself booked on tour to do, to go and play shows. That takes a lot of effort and work. So I think it was always naturally there. And in the band I was in, specifically my first band growing up, I was definitely kind of the business side of the band. The other guys obviously contributed, but that was kind of my role. And so I think I always had that natural sense of kind of understanding the bridge between being a creative and then kind of what it took to build and market a business. And I think that's really been an underpinning that's carried through my entire career, right? Whether it was, the music companies that I built and operated and helping artists, be successful, whether it was me being an artist all the way through even, what I've done really for the past, call it majority of my life in the professional world is working in the advertising and marketing industry, right? We're helping companies and people. Oh, sorry about that. Helping companies and people, basically market their businesses, right? So it's all, I always call it an organic progression. I think it's really, really just, people are like, how did you go from artist to musician to, music company to then marketing business and now public company? And I actually think there's a pretty good thread if you look through it that kind of goes through all of it.
No, that's definitely interesting after you explain it, how kind of obvious they are, how they all connect together and such. And so, before we move on, do you have any sort of connections to the music industry now? Do you have any sort of business? Do you play with a band on the side or any sort of creative endeavors like that? Or you kind of just moved on from that part of your life?
Yeah. So after I exited the music company, so, the progression was we had a recording studio, then I had an artist management company, was part of the kind of founding of the Chainsmokers as an artist and then built the publishing business. Then once I got out of all that and kind of exited that company, I really didn't do anything in music, maybe some advisory here or there. And that's really kind of carried forward to where I am today, except for I think the biggest thing is probably within the past 2 years, I started playing music again just for pure enjoyment, right? So do have a band, do play music, but it's really just for that pure passion. I think in a lot of ways, what was a passion for myself young, turning it into a business, I think it was a part of my life that was very important, but it kind of took something that I loved and made it purely about business. And I didn't get to enjoy it as much anymore. And I think nowadays, really music for me is much more about enjoyment, playing, and kind of for personal pleasure than it is for business. So fundamentally not really doing anything business wise related to music. Although, still have relationships and contacts and occasionally will give advice or help people who want to kind of get into the industry in some capacity.
No, I 100% relate. And I look forward to that. I used to be a very big UFC fan. And then I acquired a company called Bad Boy, sponsored all these fighters and UFC champions, turned it into a business and no longer a passion. And now I'm like, I don't even want to watch it anymore. It gives me like nightmares of dealing with customer returns. So no, I'm with you there. So let's move over to ONAR. With ONAR, what was the kind of genesis of that? Were you sitting around working your previous job you had before this and you get a call saying some private equity people think you could run this marketing conglomerate, or how did that all come together?
Yeah, I mean, that's not too dissimilar to kind of how it happened. After I exited my last business, which was a similar kind of marketing agency network, where I had kind of with a team had made acquisitions over a period of time and built up a business. The two kind of principal initial investors in ONAR knew me from that period of time, asked me to kind of come over, initially consulting and kind of being part of building what was kind of a 2.0 approach to building an agency network, right? Owning and operating, or being a conglomerate, if you want to use that word, owning and operating different marketing companies, right? And their specific expertise was in the public markets world, right? So which is something I didn't really have exposure to, but I was very interested in the challenge. And I was always interested in kind of solving for a specific kind of white space or gap that I saw in the marketing and advertising industry, right? And to me, that white space was kind of middle market businesses, right? There's tons of marketing and advertising agencies. I was guilty of it myself, who chase, the Fortune 1000, these big conglomerates, themselves who need marketing and advertising services. But just like technology has kind of proliferated, small businesses and medium-sized businesses and big businesses, you just have so many more kind of growth stage and middle market companies that need kind of world-class marketing support, but don't have the right partners for that, right? They're not running RFP processes. They don't have procurement. They're not bidding it out to 10 different agencies. They're just looking for that one partner that can be with them and deliver actual performance and help their business grow. And so I just saw that opportunity and, kind of had this platform as the ability to do it. Right. And so we kind of spent the time proving that model out, figuring out how we were going to do it. Obviously, technology is at the core of what we're doing, building this business from the ground up. We don't have really any physical offices. We kind of hire people, post-COVID, where they are for the best talent possible, right? And then the biggest underpinning is how can we create services that are at a cost-effective point for our clients? And the best way to do that is leveraging a lot of technology to be able to kind of function more as like a SaaS business, right? So our services are very productized, not very custom, but designed in a way that they serve a very specific kind of customer set, which allows us to scale more quickly and kind of service those clients better and more efficiently, right? So that's how I got into that, and then I was able to kind of take this vision, and fortunately people and some team that have worked with me over the years came with me to this organization, and really we're starting that journey, right? We're building this kind of new approach on a marketing, technology, and agency business that we can kind of grow in the public markets.
And so when they first contacted you, was it more of an idea and they wanted you to execute it, or had they acquired one company and planned to acquire a couple more and then needed a CEO? Where were they in that stage?
Yeah, so they had originally invested in a private marketing business that had been facing some challenges. It was a digital business, and so that there was already an existing company, and had aspirations to acquire a few other ones. And so I was brought in at kind of that phase. So there's already an existing business. There was always clients, et cetera, but there was a lot of, how should I say, kind of restructuring, cleanup that needed to happen. And then we actually ended up buying, two small businesses while we were still private, to kind of, prove out what we wanted to do, as well as kind of bolster the business they had originally invested in. So I came into an existing piece of what existed, but was able to kind of bring my experience, know-how, and relationships to the table to kind of set ourselves up for where we are now.
And so the audience has a better idea, kind of in your own words, what's 2 or 3 of the companies that you all own and operate? What kind of verticals do they help with in marketing?
Yeah, so I think we have 2 core businesses that I talk about regularly. We have, a third that I'll say has been put on ice for a number of reasons, but we can talk about that. But the 2 core verticals, I'll call it tip of the spear. One is our business Storia, which is an award-winning kind of performance marketing agency is what we call it. But really simply said, we help people sell stuff in the digital ecosystem, right? Online. So that can be products, that can be services, mostly B2C, but there is some B2B as well. And really what we do, our function, right, is we basically are able to take a client's advertisements, creative, with a lot of agility, basically reprocess that, and then create advertisements across hundreds of different platforms and places to try to drive traffic or potential customers to a destination to hopefully buy a product, right? That's at the core of what we do on that business. Now, there's a lot of nuance on how we do it better, faster, smarter, et cetera. But again, simply said, help people sell stuff in the digital ecosystem. The other kind of business that's core to us is our healthcare business. It's called OVCOS. The name speaks to Hippocrates OVCOS, or the Hippocratic Oath, right? So it's really our healthcare business, and that business is actually primarily B2B. So working with service providers and product providers who are looking to advertise and market to doctors and practices and outpatient facilities and things like that. So there's definitely, again, a performance element to it, right? Our marketing services help these companies generate sales and revenue. And that's both digital with a little bit of physical as well. And those are kind of our 2 core businesses, and they're very by design, if you will, right? Our belief is that healthcare, obviously in its own way is an ever growing market and industry, and especially one that continues to have growth in both kind of the early stage and middle market stage. We're all getting older. Medicine is progressing. Post-COVID times, there's a ton of investment in wellness and healthy living. So we just see that as a category that we want to continue to invest in and grow, because it's going to be there for it's going to continue to grow, right? And then of course, digital, right? Let's just call it digital ecosystem, digital advertising. I mean, that's not going anywhere, right? And people needing to buy stuff and those businesses that need to reach those customers at the right place and the right time isn't going anywhere either, right? So those are kind of why those two core businesses are the focus for us, at least for the foreseeable future.
No, you talk about, digital advertising not going anywhere. We're just on the day after Google reporting like smashing earnings of crazy amount of ad spend and such like that. So definitely in the year 2025, not going anywhere. Another thing that piqued my interest is using like their words like rapidly and like RFP, and thinking from myself as a owner operated like business owner, an RFP process would drive me crazy. And the idea that I can like you said, almost like a SaaS software, that it's like self-service, that I can just go to your website and click, I want to become a customer of yours, would just be worth its weight in gold, that I don't have to get on a Zoom meeting 5 days from now and waste 5 days waiting to sign up for your services, 5 more days I'm not marketing my product. So I really like the idea of you all being able to be like rapidly there on the spot.
Yeah, look, that's, I think, at the core of where we want to be, right? At the end of the day, it's like, making great marketing and advertising accessible, right? Like if you go on our website for Storia, for example, it's very transparent. It says what we charge, right? It's, we're not hiding anything. And the reason for that is by design, right? Traditional agencies go through an RFP process. They spend a ton of money pitching and hoping to win business. And that works maybe if you're dealing with Nike or Disney or some of the clients that I've worked with in the past. But for what we're trying to do, and you're a medium, growing a middle market business or a growth stage business, right? You want to be able to get a solution, get it fast, know it works, and know that it's actually aligned with your goals, right? And that's a big thing about how we're building this business. And we're really trying to focus on how we're leveraging AI and technology. I know a lot of people say that, but really to replace a lot of the cumbersome things that maybe that people have previously done, that we can now do better, faster, and more cost efficient for our clients, right? Our people aren't going anywhere. People are core to our business, but we're just trying to give them tools and technology, just like we're trying to give our clients tools and technology to be able to execute their advertising campaigns and their marketing campaigns more efficiently.
Yeah, speaking of that, I know it's the buzzword of the day, but yeah, what kind of like tools and AI or any cool kind of features that you all can provide to your customers?
Yeah, so it's a combination, right? Of course, like everywhere, we're strapping together our kind of own proprietary process of leveraging external artificial intelligence and technology, right? From LLMs to data processing, et cetera. But like internally on the team, we actually have a full-time data science team, technology team, right? So we're actually also developing some of our own technology, plugging into some existing AIs for a number of different applications. One of them for us is, we as we buy businesses and as we run advertising campaigns, we grow our client base. We have an enormous amount of data, right? From Google advertising, Meta advertising, et cetera. And we're basically and every platform we advertise by that means, but we're ingesting that data and we're using proprietary kind of AI and our own algorithm to make better decisions and predictive analytics around digital ad spend. So if you see, we launched this subsidiary called ONAR Labs, and we launched a platform called Cortex, which we start basically now able to offer to our clients, where basically they can, within plus or minus 8%, know that depending on what advertising dollars they're spending and what their product price point is and where they're spending it, what their expected return on advertisement is going to be. And that's a pretty big deal. And a lot of that's because we have just that much data and we've kind of orchestrated it in a way where we can do that. Now, we can do some pretty more interesting things even with that internally, but that's just one example, right? Another one, obviously, is just on the creative side of things, right? I'll give you very simple context. Previously, if you were a brand and you gave us a photo shoot, right, that you wanted to use and some copy and made an advertisement, if we wanted to run it on 10 different platforms for you, somebody would have to manually recut or re-edit that photo or that video for those different platforms. Now we're able to do that in seconds, right? We can basically take a piece of creative, recut it for all the different places it's going to go, and have that up and running. And that just created velocity for us, right? So that's just another example of where AI is allowing the same people to do a lot more efficiently.
So moving forward, where do you plan to spend kind of your 24 hours that you only get in a day? Do you guys think about growing your current agencies? Do you think about growing the tools so that you can charge more on your agencies? Do you think about just acquiring more agencies that are within the verticals you're in? How do you guys kind of balance how you want to grow moving forward?
Yeah. So look, I think there's a near-term and long-term plan. At the end of the day, we're doing everything we can holistically to make our existing agencies able to perform and grow at a high level, right? But at the end of the day, even the best performing services businesses or even technology enabled services businesses, are growing 10, 20% a year, right? And for us, that's great. We want our core businesses to grow, and we want to limit churn, limit the amount of business we lose. And that's obviously a huge part of how you grow as an agency. But we also need to have scale, right? The point of becoming a public company was not to just kind of grow 10 or 20% only a year, right? It was to set businesses that are best in class, that are doing similar things that we can bring into our existing core verticals, right? So doing the same stuff we're doing, but maybe better, or maybe just complementary, that we can kind of integrate into it to give us scale, right? Because the scale is what allows us to address the market in a larger basis, and it also allows us to be a lot more effective, right? And so that's kind of our, medium to long-term goal, is we want to get enough scale where we can be as impactful as humanly possible, and also where we can kind of create the best return on investment for our investors. And that is, key to what we're doing, right? Running a fundamental business that actually grows every single year. We can plug in new acquisitions and throw off positive EBITDA that's going to continue to scale and create value for our shareholders and for everyone who's part of this business.
Not that you want to expose all your secrets, but are there any other marketing verticals that are really appealing to you guys besides, say, something like healthcare or helping people sell specific products? Is there you guys want to get into the aircraft marketing market, or any other ones that you see, hey, they aren't up to date, they aren't doing the latest stuff in this specific vertical, we think we could really help out these industries?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to give away kind of all the secrets and where we're looking, but I'll tell you one that's kind of public information that I think is important is, for when I joined the business, there was and this is kind of my background, a experiential marketing business, part of what we were doing called Chalk. We still maintain the entity, et cetera. It was doing a few $1 million in kind of revenue a year, but really was just kind of break even. And so we made the conscious decision to kind of pump the brakes on that as we decided what we're going to do next. But we're not kind of abandoning that sort of approach. And so what I mean by that is, as much as digital is important, as much as, subsets or specific industries like healthcare are important, we don't believe that the physical world is going anywhere, right? And so there is an importance of basically for us as a business having a strategy, having an approach where we can help these same businesses market themselves in the physical world. Now that could be trade shows, that could be sampling, that could be a number of even digitally enabled tactics, right? But that is an important piece to kind of our approach, and one that I would say you should expect to see us doing some interesting things in the future as we dive back into having a experiential marketing practice as part of our overall ecosystem.
With the experiential marketing and the agencies that help with Google and Meta ads, do you ever double dip and have the one agency run Google ads for the other agency, or have the experiential marketing set up the trade show booth for what your healthcare company? Do you ever double dip like that, or is that not really in the business plan?
Well, so look, from a cross-selling perspective, that of course is always the goal, right? Being able to say, hey, is there a client on one ecosystem that could benefit from services of another one of our agencies? I think in terms of marketing ourselves, the tough thing about running an agency business, it's the cobbler making his own has no shoes, right? It's you spend all your effort and energy to have people servicing your clients. You don't always do a good job of it for yourself. And so we've made a conscious effort to kind of take great team people from internally and those learnings and those understandings and start building kind of our own internal agency that is going to market ourselves, right? And so we have the resources, the execution ability, but you still need that kind of center of excellence, that thought leadership place to kind of drive that strategy forwards. And so yes, we definitely want to be able to leverage our own services for ourselves as a company as we go forwards, but there is going to be kind of an internal team that's running and managing that, and it kind of becomes a client of ourselves, if that makes sense, right? So set ourselves up where we can kind of be our own client.
So as we wrap up here, as you get up in the morning, what gets you excited about ONAR? What's the thing that gets you pumped up to say, hey, today's a great day, we're going to do some great stuff?
Look, I think the opportunity that I see in the market is what gets me excited. And the fact that, you know, we have a vehicle in this public company that every single employee that's part of the companies are shareholders as much as our external shareholders are there. And I just think there is so much opportunity for us to go to 0 to 1, right? There's tons of big marketing agencies out there, your public holding companies, your WPPs, your Omnicoms, your Havas. They're so big and they've been around for a long time, but there hasn't been a lot of people that have kind of gone from 0 to there, right? And I just feel like it's a massive opportunity. You know, it's a, $1.6 trillion, industry, and the big holdcos make up like $80 billion of it or something like that, right? So there's a ton of opportunity to consolidate and build a strong place that's going to create a lot of long-term value for everybody who's part of it, right? Who's part of that build. And I think that's what's exciting, right? And that's what's exciting about being a public company and building in this specific space where I just think there's a lot of opportunity to sort through the fragmentation and build something that's meaningful.
So if I want to send my audience to learn a little bit more about ONAR and the network of businesses you all own and operate, where should I send them?
Go to onar.com. That's ONAR.com. It's a full website. There's also an investor section where you can see about kind of the financial performance of the business, and then also links to all our subsidiary businesses as well.
Claude, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending your time with us today. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
Thanks, Will.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement, therefore, by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast.